Welcome everybody, my name is Dr. Maria Hubmer-Mogg. I'm a doctor from Austria and I'm here today in Austria, Vienna, joined by Dr. Robert Malone. Thank you, Robert, for joining us at our tour here in Vienna.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. You've done such a great job in organizing against all odds. And I think of all the people in the world, you have really had an enormous impact here in Europe, just by force of your own personal will. It's been amazing watching your journey.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me because I was so happy when I saw the interviews that you did very early, and I was very encouraged to spread the word. And so it's an honor that you are here in person with us, joining the so-called Resilience Tour. But we also said it's Global COVID Summit Goes Europe, you know, as you would say. There's lots of beautiful people from all around the world and lots of members of Global COVID Summit, as you, Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. Richard Urso, and many others, Dr. Katharina Lindley.
Kat Lindley, I think we need to
Jennifer Hibbert,
yes.
Like my two colleagues. I'll talk more about that later. Two beautiful colleagues that like really understood what I was talking about when I said, hey, I think we need a different approach in reaching the people. So, what are your thoughts on mass formation as it is said now? Because I have thoughts how we could, you know, bring people into a different direction. What is your thought on the mass formation?
So this term mass formation or mass psychosis actually was used by Sigmund Freud. And Bobby did an interview with me recently, Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr., where he spoke about his father speaking frequently to Robert McNamara after his uncle had been assassinated. And that Robert McNamara himself used the term mass psychosis to describe what happened to the American people with the propagation of all the propaganda about duck and cover and bomb shelters and the threat of the nuclear war. So this concept that Matthias has spoken about at length, and of course we're going to be joined by Dr. Desmond later on today, has a long, long historical precedent that I think goes all the way back to the allegory of Plato's cave and beyond. So this idea that people become hypnotized by this environment that they're surrounded by, and also that psychological tools that have been developed, particularly in the 20th century, can be deployed against a populace and cause them to have this group phenomena of a large fraction of the people becoming hypnotized by the propaganda that's pushed. We clearly have experienced this, and we still are suffering the effects. There's a large fraction of the population that is completely resistant to the data. They cannot hear it. They will not discuss it. They're not open even to considering it. But you ask the current situation, I see signs that that's starting to crack open a little bit.
Yes.
And that's really encouraging. The signs come out in all kinds of indirect ways. Information that's suddenly being covered somewhat in the media, somewhat objectively, and these other subtle signs of really relatively poor uptake, for instance, of the bivalent boosters. And widespread skepticism of the need to inoculate children with these products, children that have no real risk for disease associated with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So I think we need to recognize that we are making progress, however slow, however painful. And Matthias, closing on this, Matthias teaches again and again that it's our obligation, in a sense, paradoxically, now that we have joined in this effort to bring truth to people, despite all the obstacles, we have to keep speaking honestly, calmly, from the heart, which I think is your core message here that's so powerful here in Europe, is to speak from the heart and to offer a better future and a better vision. And I think you're succeeding from everything I'm hearing. So I look forward to seeing even more success in the next year.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I heard in March I was so into, reading about mass formation and mass psychosis, worst mass hypnosis. And then I said, we need to find the absolute different approach. It's like, for these people, the glass is half empty. And I said, let's get into crowd resilience. And I'm also a resilience coach, not only a doctor.
Excellent.
So I came up with the term, and I was like, this is good. The glass is half full, and this glass is even getting fuller. So that's the approach that we need to take to reach those people that probably got the injections, that probably have questions now, that raise concerns. And if we would do angry speeches, or would just reach out to them and call them out for stepping into the mass formation at first, that would not help to reunite us. And that's the idea behind this movement, crowd resilience. So it's, for me, a very great day to have Matthias Desmet in Vienna, to have you there, so many other experts and friends, and also to join together. And this is like the approach that I found when I was organizing over 15 peaceful rallies in Austria since summer 2021. We always had, as you said, this approach to stand on stage, to be calm, bring the facts, and we always had musicians on stage. And the power and the good feeling that the people had at these rallies made them stronger and more resilient. And that's why I said we need to combine music, arts, and science. And bringing this all together brings us in a new movement that will be attractive to others, to the people that are searching for questions now, that really are searching for answers now. And they will find us being there for them. And I think the movement will be joined more and more by people who just leave the mass formation status. And as you said, by cracking this mass formation of fear with, as J.P. Sears, a great U.S. comedian, said it lately in an interview with Del Bigtree from I Can Decide, thehighwire.com. He said, you need a jackhammer to crack the mass formation of fear. And the jackhammer is either facts or it's emotion. And then the fear can be transformed into, ultimately, which is the most important, to love. And so people can really live their lives free and happily.
Listening to you, what strikes me is not only your leadership, but your leadership style. Mm. You're a servant leader. You're not an autocratic, unitary leader. You're leading by example and by lifting up, not by demanding and enforcing. And I think that style that you're showing all of us and teaching all of us about is absolutely necessary if we're going to move to a future that is more decentralized and more inclusive, as opposed to this dark future that the globalists seem to want to shape for all of us. I think as humanity, if we wish to fulfill our potential, we need leaders like you.
Thank you so much. I mean, it needs all of us. It needs all of us in this movement. It needs also people like, if I may mention, people like Jim Gale. He's doing food forest abundance. It's all about, regional communities growing their own food,
absolutely,
having a good time, and other people like taking care of vaccine injured and people who just need a new approach in medicine, the individualized medicine. It's very important. So I'm very happy to share my ideas in such great podium discussions that we will have today as well, and talks. And we should not forget to mention our friend Gerd Vandenbosch, who has also his scientific view on the whole thing. And it's all about scientific discourse and finding solutions. And this is what we really can do. And I'm happy to share my visions and ideas. And there are so many other great people with other great ideas and visions. And it's all of us who inspire each other. And what we talked about before, it's totally different than meeting in a Zoom call. If we just are together, and it's a totally different energy, and the ideas would have another flow that they would come up probably if we just meet online. So this is very important, to meet in person and find a way for a greater future.
There's no substitute for meeting one-on-one. And what you're bringing is science with a heart.
Yeah, so I always try to combine that working as a doctor, and it took me sometimes longer hours than my colleagues, and everybody was like, oh, come on for a drink, or come on, we have lunch. And I was like, no, I just work. But you should be done.
So this is really an extension of your practice and the lessons you've learned from working with your patients, but writ on a broader scale. That's super.
Yeah, trying my best. So to bring a question forward that you've probably not been asked in interviews before, it's for me very important. What makes you resilient personally?
Actually, I do get that question from time to time. And the first line answer is the fact that I have this long-standing, close personal working relationship with my spouse of over 44 years, Dr. Jill Glasspool-Malone, who's the co-author of the book. But it's more than that. We have worked together ever since high school. We have a close personal interactive bond. There's always a dynamic tension. I get offended, frankly, by the statement behind every great man is a great woman. Not that I'm a great man necessarily, but you get the point. I personally find that just wrong. In our case, we walk together side by side. We're not one of us behind the other. We're together. And that's a big one. Mm-hmm. Another one is that I have the benefit of age. And I've taken a lot of hits. I've had bad things happen. I've been a whistleblower before, and I've survived it. I destroyed a career before in gene therapy for speaking out against some of the things that happened with the unfortunate death of Jesse Gelsinger, a young man that was overdosed with an adenovirus vector, the same technology as in the J&J product. So I have the benefit of kind of having been through academic battles and dealt with the press and having had the perspective of setbacks. And what I try to do now is to help where I can, which also I think helps me be resilient. I don't have to try to provide leadership in so many different areas that once upon a time it kind of was falling on my shoulders. Now we have so many people like yourself and Steve Kirsch and Dell, you mentioned, of course, he's been a leader in this space for decades, long before I was. People focusing on the science, people focusing on the cardiology, people focusing on the data analysis. Jessica Rose is another great example. And so I don't have to focus on those things. And it kind of sets me free to try to think about what are the areas that aren't covered. And my sense is, I think we share this, that the need now that's not being met is to help develop and provide a vision of the future that is much more welcoming, much more human-based, much more family and child-centric, that respects dignity of individuals and the sovereignty of individuals, and is not caught up in this dark transhumanist fourth industrial revolution vision that so many seem to want to shape for us. We don't have to live in that world. If we, as a group of people, as a community, however big that community is, if it's just these small cells that are choosing to live in their own reality among themselves, their own communities, that's okay. We have to start somewhere. And if we can build among ourselves a new way of being that isn't so dependent on these autocratic leadership models that seem to breed sociopath and psychopathic tendencies.
Or as my friend David Wiseman and I came up with the term, we have a professor in Austria, Professor Martin Hadic. He likes to say to spike, okay, instead to give people this T19 injections, and he refuses to say to vaccinate in this case. And so I told that to David Wiseman, and then we said, wow, these psychopaths, like psychopaths.
Psychopaths.
That's great.
And
then Wiseman came up with the term psychopaths, because we were talking to spike and psychopaths, and we said, these are the psychopaths.
Yeah. I think language matters.
Yes.
And I think that's another important thing for all of us is don't give up our language. This is something that Orwell taught us, is our opponents are very glad to pervert our language and to restructure it and try to create new meanings for words that we've all understood for decades that have well-established meanings. And to take these words, transform them, and weaponize them against us. And we have to not let them do that.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely true. So I wanted to talk about Katharina Lindley, our colleague. She is such a wonderful mother and family physician and working so hard for mankind.
Incredible.
Yes.
Incredible physician.
Yes.
And human being.
Yes.
She gives freely every single day.
Yes.
Without ego. That's the amazing thing is, so one of the things I have just really enjoyed seeing over the last 3 years is on so many different levels, we've seen the rise of female intellectuals. I'm being careful with the whole dialogue about what is a woman, but there have been, we have been missing the voices and the experience in so many ways of these brilliant, committed women in journalism and in a public discourse in life. And I think Kat is a great example of the type of voice and intellect, unassuming, giving, but strong.
Yes.
That I think we can all look to as an example of positive leadership in a way that's not the kind of domineering autocratic model that we've seen so much of.
Yes, and it really took many people probably a long time also to, know who she is, because she would never step in front, and she would, as you say, so not an ego person. And she's in the board of the Global COVID Summit as well, and so Dr. Richard Urso, for example. And when I can join the meetings, because I was invited to become a Global COVID Summit member, which really honors me, Richard Urso and Dr. Ryan Cole and Katharina Lindley invited me to do so. So when I'm on the Zoom calls, it's 3 a.m. for me that time, but I work often long hours. It's just wonderful to see how she guides through the meetings with Richard Urso, for example. And another example for a strong person that is also absolutely not an ego and tries to connect groups from all around the world, like Australia, New Zealand, South America, is Dr. Jennifer Hibbert, our colleague from Canada.
Absolutely.
And when we think about our essay, our Christmas declaration, as we called it out in Austria, that we will hear about from this 16th of December, today we will read it out. We had many thought leaders. We had many inspiring people bringing their thoughts in, but to say it was a lot of words brought in a really nice way from Dr. Jennifer Hibbert as well, because she knows how to bring it to a point that reaches out to the people, to the hearts of the people.
So I first encountered Jennifer in some of the Canadian podcasts and Zoom calls. And again, she, in a world of many strident voices, in Canada, they're like in the US, they're members of the community that have very strong wills and tend to dominate conversations from time to time. And she's another great example of quiet strength and wisdom that has helped guided that community. I completely endorse your position on her contribution. Again, we've just been gifted by these female leaders that combine strength, wisdom, patience, and kind of a quiet confidence. That I think the last 3 years, so many things have happened. So many opportunities have been created. And we've seen the rise of new leaders and fellow workers and friends all over the world. And that's a gift.
Yes.
I think we need to, again, I really think we need, particularly in this season of healing and in rebirth,
Yes.
we need to recognize the positive things. It's so easy to get caught up in the negative of what's happened. But there's a lot of good that's come out of this. And if we're lucky, maybe instead of the Great Reset, we'll have the Great Awakening.
Absolutely. That's totally what I think is how we're heading to and where we are heading to. And when you were speaking, a song came to my mind. I don't know if you know the band Rising Appalachia.
No.
It's two sisters from the USA South. I don't know where they're exactly from.
Well, I know where Appalachia is.
Yes, I'm a really big fan of their music. And they have a song, it's called I Am Resilient. And it starts with, I am resilient, I trust the movement, I negate the chaos, uplift the negative, and so on. So you need to listen to that song. It's just beautiful. The whole lyrics just, bring you to goosebumps state. And
we should put a link in the Chiron for this
we will do that for sure. I do think also what is very important to point out here, as there are so many groups around the world, and I think you have worked with different groups, organizations, and people from all around the world. For me, it is always very important to point out, even if there are different leaders of different groups, you don't need to necessarily go for a beer with everyone, it's not like the same kind of energy with all the people, and you probably find friends closer, or you just see other people appreciate their work, and you would probably not hang out in your spare time with them. But it's so important. That's what I really want to point out here for all the different groups around the world. We need to know who is our opponent, step from the ego, no ego whatsoever, work together. And it's really also at Christmas time, because I have a very deep insight into resistance groups, or we would like to say visionary organizations. And we really need to not work together in all topics, but we should have the common effort to face our opponent. And I think we need to appreciate the work of all the groups worldwide that are true from their heart. I'm sure there are some of them who probably will never step from their ego, but it's the true from their heart groups that will make this big change, that will attract all the people that need our help right now. We will still have a percentage of people that will be stuck in mass hypnosis forever, probably. And here I want to refer to the talk that Griffin did with Yuri Bezmenov. It was an interview in the, I think, 1990s, and Del Bigtree brought it in the Highwire. It's his name is Edward Griffin, and he did in the 90s this interview with Yuri Bezmenov, this ex-KGB agent.
Yeah, I've seen clips of that profound interview.
And they talked about individualism versus collectivism. It's really impactful. And then Griffin said, all great change in history has never done by the great masses, but by I think he says 15%. And I think we are already now more than these 15%. And so I'm very hopeful and not to bring it in Mickey Willis' words, I'm not hopeful. He said that in a Zoom call that we did during our conference days in September. He said, I lost hope a long time ago. He said, he is certain. So it's certainty that drives him, that we will shift this towards the positive. And I think we all know that through all the times in history, God and the good will and have always prevailed and will prevail.
Wow, that was quite a long statement. So how to react to that? We are, I guess, going to see the rollout of the Plandemic 3 clip today. That's going to be fantastic at the rally.
Yes.
Mickey firmly believes, in my experience as yours, that the attitude that we bring into this is super important. You touched on some sensitive topics, and one of them relates to the division that is happening and being, I suggest, actively sown. And it often wears the mask of these terms like controlled opposition. These are thrown about irresponsibly. And I think that we have to be really careful about what in the French Revolution was j'accuse, this willingness to apply litmus tests and to reject anyone who doesn't meet your specific litmus test for purity or intellectual purity or commitment. So and it's often the ones that are at the edges that are a little more prone to believing. It's so easy to fall into a belief system that's dominated by an awareness of how manipulated we have been. And to build, this term conspiracy theory, I think is another one that's overused. Again and again, things that we thought were conspiracy theories, like the Great Reset, turn out, or the lab leak hypothesis, turn out to become truth as opposed to theories. So I think we have to be really careful about applying that term, but there is a fine line between advancing belief systems that are more grounded on intuition than data, and then rejecting anyone who won't buy into your belief system, or coming up with a strong inference about what someone else is trying to say, like, for instance, Matthias, and some of the criticism that's been directed against Matthias, that I believe personally is grossly unjustified. I think that we need to have the tolerance and the love to recognize that in a chorus, people sing different songs. We need to be a chorus, not all singing exactly the same, at exactly the same pitch, but rather coming together to create beautiful music with diversity within that music of voices. And I really resonate with your point that at this moment in time, when we seem to be balanced on an edge, we should try to avoid taking shots at each other, and recognize there are people that are aligned with our opponents that actively seek to create division and sow chaos and disruption, and to resist that tendency, to recognize that our common ground is so much greater than our subtle differences of interpretation of blood clot physiology or whatever, right? It's just silly. In two thoughts on this. It's really useful to have a worthy opponent. And by God, we've got some worthy opponents in the WEF and the UN and BlackRock and all those organizations. And I think we can all now see that the battle that has been enjoined here for the future for our children is not just about the jabs. It's not even just about medical freedom. It's about sovereignty, autonomy, the rights of respect of the individual, the importance of commitment to integrity. We live in a world in which many of our governments apparently find it more important to align with large financial initiatives and organizations and forces than to be committed to truth and transparency. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of a biblical quote: "What does it serve a man to gain the world and lose his soul?" Mm-hmm. And I think the same applies to nation states.
Right.
I think that what does it serve an imperial power or powers to seek hegemony and to dominate the world if in doing so they lose their souls? And I think we've had a lot of that. And it's us common people.
Yes, us all.
You know, and particularly those of us that live in the real world, that do things like doctors and plumbers and carpenters and farmers, right. For heaven's sake, yes. That we're in touch with the truth, the real objective reality that exists in the world, and somehow we have to find common cause and ways of interacting.
Yeah, and it will be a how-to way we will work through. And I think it's so important that we all have the regional groups and they figure out how to work on different things best. And then in the international interaction, we can help each other out. We can offer solutions. It's all about solutions and being active.
And I love your focus on regional pods or groups or organizations or hubs, intentional communities, because what is right for someone living in a rural part of Latin America is not going to be the right thing for someone living in Amsterdam.
Right.
And that's okay. We don't have to have one universal centralized global command economy based solution for all of humanity. We've tried that so many times, it doesn't work. Again, I think the metaphor of participating in a choir, not being a solo singer, applies here. Yes. And that we find ways that we can sing together in the future, maybe that have never been tried before. I think that is the opportunity. And there are many people that I encounter that believe they know what the future should be, what the solution should be. My opinion, I'm very wary of those people. I think for me, all I can do, and what I'm trying to do, is find ways that these diverse groups can self-assemble while maintaining their autonomy and come up with their versions of what that future looks like, rather than me trying to come up with that version, or you or that person or that person. The press and the think tanks are always glad to tell us what we should be doing. Right. And I think we have to tell them to go away, because what they're going to do is they're going to force us back into the same solutions that we have had experience with for millennia now. It
would be, again, a top-down thing, and it needs to be, like in grassroots movement, a bottom-up situation, and organized very well from regional structures and organizations, but also just hubs and communities, families, groups. So Robert, thank you so much for the opportunity that I could speak here with you before we start a great...
And for my opportunity to share what you've created here in Europe.
Oh, thank you so much.
To be a little part of it, and to be able to watch you succeed and flourish. That's just a great joy. At my age, I don't want to be a big boss of anybody. I love to mentor and help grow.
You're doing a great job in that, and it really, you can't cut the emotion out. It's like bringing tears to my eyes to finally sit here with you, and that we all be together in this tour.
Because it's from the heart.
Right, it's right from the heart. And I want to end this interview with the title that we put on our flyers. And if you don't mind, read it out in German and English. So that's what the Resilience Tour is about. And I will do that now for the end of this nice talk with you. Thank you so much, Robert, from the bottom of my heart. And let's keep doing good work together, okay?
Yeah.
All of us.
Now you better get on because you are organizing everything, and we need to let you go and solve a million problems, and answer a bazillion phone calls.
I think many people can do that, and let's do it together. And just probably we do resilience tours all over the world. I think they could go to Australia, to the USA, and so on. So I'm happy to share the idea, and people just put events together like this.
If I may, in closing, my friend, remember to protect your own resilience.
Yes, I do. Trust me, I do. I have my minutes for myself every day with my thoughts that I was, there's a German saying, it says, wer einmal am Meeresgrund war, der fürchtet sich nicht mehr vor Pfützen. Meaning, whoever was on the ground of a sea will never be afraid of a raindrop. So I'd say I gone through lots of, as so many people, we have our personal stories. And, if you get through this, like the wisdom or feeling how to, when resilience means when resiliare is from Latin, and it's not like a resistant thing. It's like, okay, there's an obstacle. I bounce back a little. That's the word resiliare. It's bounce back. And then I'll find my way through it, and so this is what I think we all can learn on our journeys.
There's a biblical saying that you're well familiar with, that the meek shall inherit the earth. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating about that is the meaning of the word meek at the time it was written is strength with resilience.
Yes,
it's humble strength. Mm-hmm. It's not giving in always, but walking with humble strength and resilience. And I just honor that you embody that. Yes. And I look forward to seeing the wonderful things that are going to happen here, both today, later, and in the coming years. Yeah, thank you so much. And now I will end this with the saying that we put on the flyer. Resilience on Tour. Es braucht die Mutmacher. Es braucht die Samenseher, es braucht die Faktenbringer, es braucht die darüber Berichter, es braucht die Filmemacher, es braucht die mit Musik Berührer, es braucht die mit Kunst Inspirierer, es braucht die Hilfesteller, es braucht die Heilkundigen, es braucht die Rechtsgelehrten, es braucht die Was-Beibringer, es braucht die Davids gegen Goliath, es braucht Resilienz und vor allem braucht es die Liebe. Now the English version. Now is the time for the inspirers of change, the planters of seeds and bringers of truth, for the new media that has the courage to break through, for the filmmakers that reveal the lies to free our minds, for the singers, songwriters, and poets to write and sing of freedom and liberty, for the artists to create a new picture of the world, for the scholars of law who uphold honesty and integrity, for the wisdom of the healers, teachers, and guides, who remind us that the truth is in sight if we only look and see. Now is the time to see that the light is more powerful than the darkness could ever be, and nurture our resilience deep within. But above all, the time for love. Thank you. Thank you so much. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks.